Walsh. At Pendo, I head up all of our core products, so that's analytics, in-app guidance, NPS. And I also head up the underlying technology platform that supports all 6 of our different products that are in line. And I want to dive in today into how we look at that data, both quantitative, qualitative, and how do we transform data into outcomes for our customers and outcomes for our own organization. But first, I want to start with cautionary tale. And I think right now in the time that we're moving into AI, moving into this realm of intelligence, it's really important to reflect back on how our industry has failed in the past. And let's look at Google Glass. Like when this launched, and I lived in San Francisco at the time, it was everywhere. We saw this at bars. You saw Robert Scoble in a shower wearing it with a picture, and all the people were applauding. It was going crazy. But those were the wrong metrics. Those were vanity metrics. And that failed. And that failed because it wasn't actually generating the correct metrics that matter. Was it delivering value? Was it bringing users back? Did it solve a real problem? Was there pain? We want to develop products and solutions that solve pain, and Google Glass did not do that for us. And so measurement is critical for us in establishing that. And our industry has come a long way, especially our craft. Our craft as product managers over the last 10, 15 years has radically improved. And part of that is because we're transforming into product-led organizations. A product-led organization is one that aligns all of its different parts, its sales, its success, technical support, engineering, product design, with the product at the center of the relationship with the customer, where we align all of our goals to work together. We're all working together towards that same goal off the same data set. And in doing that, we can deliver better outcomes for our organization, better outcomes for our customers. So product-led organizations are driven by data. And that data is used to actually inspire each other. What are we working on and why? It's used to actually inform our decision-making. Every decision is powered by data about how our customers are actually interacting with our product. Put that into light, give some examples for it. Let's start with iRobot. iRobot makes the Roomba. This is a robot that goes around and vacuums and mops your floor for you. Now, that's a real pain. I've got 2 teenage boys, and I can tell you how much pain that I'm in because of the mess they create. And at iRobot, they wanted to create even more interaction with their customer base. They have 14 million users of these devices. But how do you create a relationship, engagement with a robot that's supposed to just do things on its own without talking to you? And for them, it was the mobile application. Through that mobile application with 14 million users, they wanted to drive greater engagement, make sure that their customers were getting bigger outcomes, a cleaner house. So through that process, they actually broke down the journey. What is the journey of a customer in interacting with that robot? How do you set it up? How does it map your house? How do you build a schedule for it? And through that, they started really breaking that down. 14 million people is too many to look at all of those points. So they broke it into segments. Customer they had on, data they had on their customers. Where do they live? How large is the home? They had channel information. Where had they bought it? Why did they look for it? What comments had they commented on? And they started segmenting their entire audience to look at this customer journey, those moments that matter. When did they actually set it up? Did they set a schedule for it? And then they started aligning their teams to actually help achieve those. As they set goals, how long should it take to do the first step, to do the third step? And not only were they working on it with their product teams and their engineering teams and trying to actually move that metric forward, but they aligned it with their customer success team, their product marketing team. How are we going to message? How are we actually going to bring in and do in-app and do out-of-app and do email? Through that process, they actually generated 43% more engagement with their customers in that mobile app and the robot. But that's not even the greatest number. The greatest number is they actually reduced the engineering effort by 75%. Think about that. They aligned their company around the product and the data with similar goals, and they were able to reduce the engineering effort. Just an amazing story for them. Okta. Well, this is a platform that manages identity for organizations. How do each of us log into the software that our companies buy? And it's a very sophisticated platform, one that is security first. That's complex. So their process to actually manage everything that's going on, how do they plan? How do they roll out? How do they test? How do they support? It's a very mature and sophisticated process. They broke down that same exact process to actually look at what are those points that matter. What happens when there's a security breach? How do you reach out? How do they align their teams on all of that data? So they created a closed loop system, a system that looked at all of the interactions, that looked at the surveys they put out, the polls they put out, and their teams together used in-app messaging, used the product, all of their product investments, to make sure that they were actually driving their customers to those points that matter, to making their applications more secure. And they didn't end there. They then put in, at the end of the loop, NPS to measure the sentiment of their customers. Were they happy with the brand overall? Were they happy with what's going? And this process hasn't stopped. Now that we're into intelligence and AI, they're personalizing those experiences. When a CISO, a Chief Information Security Officer, logs into Okta, they get personalized video messages that actually say, here is what's going on at your individual company, and it speaks directly to that individual. It's magnificent how much they've invested in all of that data to align each of their teams to generate outcomes for their customers and for Okta. And in each of those, what's important about their investment is they started with the why. Why are we making this investment? What's the outcome we're trying to get to? So that starts with a business case. What audience are we actually targeting this for? We are going to invest a pile of money from our board of directors. And who are we investing it towards? Right? And we're going to actually have to address a pain. This part is so important. It's not a nice to have, it's a need to have. We have to actually address pain. Don't be a vitamin, be a painkiller. Make sure you're actually investing in true customer pain. And lastly, by making this investment, what's the outcome? What do we expect to do for our organization, for our business? Is it going to raise revenue? Is it going to reduce churn? Is it going to cut our costs? We've got to know, because the board is giving us that pile of money, and they expect a dump truck to pour back a lot of money. That's what they're looking to us to do. So we have to make sure when we're making an investment, we make that business case for it. And a great business case also talks about what happens if we don't make this investment. Now, this doesn't have to be a super long process. There's great frameworks. There's the SAFE framework, 60-second business case framework. These are designed to say, hey, if we weren't to invest, what would happen to our business? What would happen to our customers? And that's pretty key, because it helps actually getting to where is the pain? Is this truly needed? When Henry Ford did this process and started building the car, there was one key aspect on top of all of that came to play, which was he had a point of view, a very strong point of view. Because his customers that he was speaking to weren't asking for a faster car. They weren't asking for a car at all. They were asking for a faster horse. But he had a point of view that that's not what they actually need. That's what we were just talking about. When Pendo was founded, our customers were saying, we need an analytics solution. We need a guidance solution. We need to do this. And our point of view at the time was controversial to say, actually, you need one system for which you can take insights and take action. You can do both together. And it's going to be very hard to build, and it's going to be very expensive, but we believe that that's what you're actually needing to do. And one of the things I love about this picture is it's a perfect example of what an MVP is. Like, look at that initial car they shipped. It doesn't have a steering wheel. It has a joystick. It looks like a wagon. When you do research on it, it only had a gas pedal, didn't have a brake on it. It's sort of crazy how he got to market to get that feedback from the customers in there. And part of that is knowing your customer well. We truly have to get in to understand our customer. And again, frameworks come to play. Jobs to be done framework is an awesome one. Truly being able to break down and understand exactly what your customers are trying to do so that as you design solutions, you know it's going to solve their problem. The other is actually designing with the end in mind. You know, Amazon has a very famous process of a PR FAQ, press release. Write the press release ahead of time, before you've even put any engineering hours in. Align everyone to what that looks like. I love that process. In my previous role as CEO of a company, I brought my leadership team together. We were in Yountville, California, beautiful wine country. We sat in this great conference room, and I had everybody together, and we said, look, we're going to learn how to do this, because the standard way of actually building is we stand today and look to the future. And when you do that, you see all the things that are in your way. And it gets slow and hard. The other way is to stand in the future, to get everyone around you to fall in love with this is what the future could look like. And then we look backwards at today. And let me tell you, most of those blockers start disappearing. So when I ran this exercise with my leadership team, the head of engineering said, look, I'm thinking 10 years. And I want to live in Florida near the beach. I don't want to be on the beach like a mile away. We want to have an extra kid. I want 2 children, and I want a dog. I want to have a business that I own myself, and it's thriving. We did that exercise. We all applauded for him. Hey, that sounds nice. That's good. 2 months later, he quit the company. He started a company. He moved to Florida. 2 years later, he sold the company to IBM. So the cautionary tale is don't do that exercise with your best employees, because you will lose them, because they're going to realize their dreams are that attainable. But building it with product is awesome. And once you have that vision in place, then break it down. What are the steps that we're going to build? And this is where your customers come back into play. You validate those ideas with them. You validate the steps with them. Engage them in the process. Make them vested in that outcome. They want to achieve that outcome with you. Are these the right steps that you're going to do? And before you've invested any money in actually getting there, put your goals down. By doing this investment, here's what we expect to have happen. So if you do that late in the process, you build it and then build your goals, let me tell you, those goals are really achievable. But if you do it early in the process, those goals are actually guide rails. You can see quickly whether or not you're actually starting to achieve that goal, and you can change and you can pivot. Everything we do in product and engineering is a hypothesis. We don't actually know the outcome. So put a measurable goal in there to help you get there. Those become your operational goals. Because what we measure defines who we're becoming, defines who we are. It's what what's important to us. How do we make decisions? Our board, our CFO, our CEO, they care about lagging indicators, net revenue retention, cost of acquiring customers, lifetime value. That's what's important to them. But as a product team, that's way too late. If we're waiting to see if we affected churn, and you're an enterprise company, those are 3-year contracts. There is no way that you're actually going to know early in the process if you're on the right path. So that's why we need leading indicators about product usage, about adoption, about activation. How do we know as quickly as possible the work we're doing is actually going to pay off? And we take those leading indicators and they become the metrics for our operational goals. How do I know that feature adoption is happening? Stickiness is happening. Because having that in place will actually define the decisions that we make and the investments that we make. 15.5 is an organization that does performance management for organizations, for companies. So how does a manager do performance management for their employees? And they put in place a fairly aggressive set of goals for them on these operational standpoint. Weekly active users, product adoption, feature adoption. And when they did that, one of the things that came to light was, hey, you only do performance reviews every 6 months. So how the hell are you going to get people to use new features that come out if they only come back every 6 months? So those measures force them to release things that would drive you back to continuous improvement of your employees. Weekly check-ins with your employees, having a ceremony and a dashboard and driving that. And that completely changed their business because they started measuring the things that mattered for their customers, for their own business. But it wasn't just that quantitative measure, it was also the qualitative. They put polls out, they did interviews, they met with their customers. They tracked all of that data because the qualitative gives us context for that quantitative data. And there's a lot of ways that we can measure qualitative. We can use NPS, CSAT, SUS, product market fit score. But they're essential for us to actually provide context, to give us a place to start to look. I mean, look, when you actually have instrumented your products, there's so much available data to you, it's overwhelming. But the qualitative allows you to zero in on what actually matters. Because once we have that in place, we actually have to take action. We have to generate outcomes from this. And that's where an action plan comes into place. As product managers, we have access to Scrum teams. We can build things. Product marketing teams, we can message. Customer success teams, we can build an app messaging with them. Right? There's so many different things for us available. We have to be very deliberate about which one of these avenues we're actually taking it. 2, we've got to break this data down. Study your cohorts. Look at the industry. How do industries compare? Look at company size. Look at location and regional. Are they new customers, old customers? Understand how these cohorts against those metrics that you're measuring are behaving differently. And that's your segmentation. Segmentation allows you to really get deep. Like if you look at NPS, you're going to have a pile of users that say, you're great, and they're promoters, and they're detractors. What's different between them? Well, that's where you're able to segment and actually look at those behavioral differences. And then be bold and actually say, here is the experiment that I'm going for. I'm going to change this metric. I'm going to move from 30% adoption to 50% adoption, or 60% adoption. And you're deploying those action plans and measuring against every single one of those to see what is actually driving that growth. Now, interesting, data itself can be misleading. I worked with a financial service company lately. It was a global brand that's been in digital transformation for the last 15, 20 years. And in that process, they had beautiful models that showed engaged users, showed onboarding users, showed people that were likely to churn. So we put replay in to watch. Hey, let's look at your engaged users. Why are they doing this so well? And their faces froze. Because those engaged users weren't happy. They were super frustrated and just clicking all over the app. They had no idea what they were doing inside that app. And they actually adopted a mantra of go beyond the click. So there's a difference in sort of listening or hearing our customers using that one sense and not truly listening, using all of our senses, visualization and thought, etc. And then the greatest product executives align their R&D investment exactly to those outcomes they're generating. And that doesn't happen once. It's not a beginning of the year investment. That happens every quarter. That happens every month. You're constantly going back to say, am I taking those dollars and actually putting them into the biggest outcomes? And I think this is where AI comes in to really help us. Because that is a lot of data and a lot of steps we just covered. And there's very few people on a product team to make that happen. And so AI is actually stepping in to give us summaries, to help us align those summaries and that feedback from our customers into specific product areas, showing us what they're actually saying. And we can actually look at our workflows, look at that analytics data, and we can surface up the insights that truly matter for us. We can actually look at what was supposed to be happening or what should I pay attention to, where is there an anomaly? And AI is to give us a superpower to do that. It's not here to take our jobs. It's not here to replace us, because the best human managers have the most human skills. We have empathy. We have compassion. We collaborate with our teammates. We're curious. We're creative. AI is not going to replace that. AI is going to actually bring it so we can spend time on that. There's a final moment. I want to share one last story with you, which is about Morgan Stanley, one of the largest investment brokers on Wall Street. And their business-to-business unit deals with about 40% of all employers in the world to help them manage the investments for retirement for all their employees. And they lost one of their largest customers. And worse yet, it was a surprise. They didn't see it coming. And when they went to their product team, now these are people with 30 years of experience, they all said, hey, we built the right product. I don't know why they're doing this. Nobody knows. It was a surprise. So they instrumented, they marked out what was the journey that all of these customers were to be on. And in that journey, they went back and they started marking what they called happiness markers. What were those moments of happiness they should do for the employee, for the employer? Then they aligned their product investment to that. They aligned their segmentation to understand the size of business, the industry, the region, the country they were in. And then as they got better, they realized we still had some accounts slipping, so they took their customer success team and said, we need to do outreach, we need to do on-sites, we need to align you. And they saw great improvement. And customer success and product were working together. And then they realized as we started hitting those happiness markers, that's the exact time that we should upsell, that we should cross-sell. And so the sales team got involved. So Morgan Stanley took a moment of crisis and transformed it into how to become a product-led organization. And that made them generate better outcomes for their customers, the customers' employees, and also for Morgan Stanley itself. Thank you very much.